All right, welcome back to the podcast. We're going to welcome back Coach Mueller. I always said your name wrong. Son of a Coach Mueller. Thanks for being here.
Hey, awesome to be back on. Love doing it. It was great connecting when was it? Last summer, maybe, right? Just before football season,
Yep, end of summer. Yep. That's what
end of
happened.
summer. Obviously 6 months has been pretty awesome for us here in Stewartville. And so great to hop back on with you here and catch up with everything that we got going on.
Yeah, I should say state title winning coach.
Yeah,
Go
there you
win
go.
the state title. Now if you weren't big time before, you're big time now.
Oh, well, yeah, say no. I'm just lucky to be in a great circumstance here. It's a and any coach out there that's listening knows, there's so much that goes into, even just a undefeated regular season, how difficult that is, and then to be able to put a run together in the playoffs as well. Like I said, so much that goes into that, and a lot of things have to go your way in terms of staying healthy,
Hmm.
having some good breaks on Friday nights and things like that, and just doing a great job in your preparation and then your execution on game day. So lucky to have had a very talented group of players this year that had a lot of experience coming back from a solid 2022 team,
Hmm.
building on that experience then and having a great offseason of preparation and then going out uh, and just executing at a really high level. And I've mentioned this in wherever in clinics or podcasts and things like that, but just my coaching staff is amazing. The guys that I have surrounding me and helping lead our program is absolutely outstanding. Guys that have completely bought into kind of our mission and the way we do things, and do such a great job building relationships and connections with guys and really really high football IQ and our great teachers, and keep kids motivated and excited and enjoying every day when they come out to practice. So it's a compilation of a lot of different things that really have to come together for the season that we had to happen. And fortunate to be a part of that ride and leading that wave, and just an outstanding season, one we'll remember forever for sure.
The big thing, the big thing I think you said was staying healthy. That's what happened to us this year. We stayed healthy, and it was the first time we've been this healthy, and we were all in shock. We were like, "Wait a minute." I was like, I've had the same starting O line for like 4 or 5 weeks now. Like, what is going on?
This is
Or like,
normal.
yeah, or like, oh, we have the same wide receivers and quarterback. Like, this is crazy. Like,
Yeah, and right, it's amazing when you have, well, number one, consistency obviously is huge, but then when you have your best players on the field, you can go and compete most weeks. I think that's always the big thing is, if you lose, especially at a school, our size, we don't have the same caliber kid just waiting in the wings, ready to step up with the same level of experience and the ability to go execute the measurables and all that kind of stuff. So we have to have our best players on the field to go do what we did and to go win football games. And I think any coach, out there, if you ask them, the whether they, I think there's two pieces to that, right? Everyone says they want to, to be healthy, and that's important to them to stay healthy and have their guys on the field. And then your follow up question needs to be, well, what are you doing to ensure that happens? And there's
right.
never a guarantee. Injuries are going to happen. It's a violent contact sport, and stuff's going to happen despite no matter what you do. Um, but I think the things that we got going on in our program at least help limit that risk. And we the last 3 years in a row we've our starting 11 offense defense, we had everybody out there in our last game of the year. And so, that's huge for us to be able to compete all year long, and especially when you get to, high level football at the end of the year in the playoffs for sure.
Was this the first state title one?
This was the first state title in school history. Yeah. So
Nice.
which was really cool. And Stewartville Athletics has had a lot of success over the years for a long time, especially recently. Not just in football, but a lot of sports. And so we're again just blessed with having a lot of really good coaches and good programs and good kids that want to come in and work hard and do all the little things necessarily to be successful. Our volleyball team has had multiple state championships, but outside of that, we haven't had, any, you know, kind of significant state team championships in school history. So really, really cool to go get that done for football for sure this year. And been a long time, building to that, but
Mhm.
awesome to finally achieve it.
How many games then does it take to get to the state title up there?
Yeah, and so in Minnesota, it's kind of unique. We have an 8 game regular season.
Okay.
Everybody makes the playoffs, which
Okay.
I'm kind of on the fence about. Sometimes it just depends. I suppose it depends on the situation that you're in, right?
Right.
But so everyone makes the playoffs, and so kind of you're guaranteed that 9th game is your first round playoff game. The state divides up into different sub districts then for what you call them sections for the postseason.
Right.
Each section has anywhere from 4 to 8 teams in it, just depending on location where you're at, division that you're in. And so then you play through your section playoffs. So some teams will only have 2 section playoff games. Some teams will have 3, depending if you like earn a bye because you have less than
Mhm.
8. This year we had 8 teams in our postseason section. So we had to play 3 games right away in the playoffs, and then the states divide up into 8 sections for each division. So you have 8 section champions that are then advanced to what we call the state tournament. And then those 8 teams play out an 8-team state tournament essentially. So we have 3 more games. So we played 14 this year. We had 8 regular season and 6 postseason games.
Wow. Wow. That's
So
a lot of postseason
it
games.
is right when you look at the number of compared to your regular season, almost as many. So that's the most you could play would be 14. There's a lot of teams that only play 13 because most postseason sections are 5, 6, 7 teams.
Mhm.
And so you get,
Right.
if the best team comes out of there, they probably had a bye. And so they only play 5 postseason games, but we maxed it out this year.
Yeah, that's a lot because in Illinois, you get 9 regular season games. If you make it to the state title game, the state title is your 14th game.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. And you got to make the playoffs. Like you have to go.
Qualify for it, right? I
So
think
if you're,
that's similar to Wisconsin. I grew up in Wisconsin.
yeah, yeah,
And that was that way. It was nine regular season games, and then you had to have like a 500 or above record in your
yep.
conference, make the
Well,
playoffs, and then 5 postseason games.
yeah, in Illinois, it's split up into 8 classes. Obviously 1A through 8A, and then depending on how many people make it, their strength of schedule, how many playoff points you have. If you go 5-4, if you're 5-4, I think it's like a 90% chance you make it in, but there's a 10% chance you don't. Like for us, if we went 5-4, we didn't know if we were going to make it because our playoff points were not the best at all.
What's that determined by, like your regular season opponents, or?
Yeah, so like if you lose to a team but they only go on to win 2 games, they're like, well, you're not getting really a lot of points from them, or you beat a team and they go 1-8, like you're not really, they don't consider that high points.
Yeah.
So like that's why you're kind of torn in Illinois of, do you go out if you have a non-conference, do you go out and get like the toughest of the tough, even though you have a tough conference because you need more playoff points, or do you try to schedule teams that are just like you? So like we're rebuilding programs, so we had to go get 2 teams that were just like us. Like
Gotcha.
but then people were giving us crap because our playoff points were low. And we're like, but we can't control our conference, so you can't really like, I mean,
Yeah. And that's what we try to do this year. We kind of knew there's a few competitive teams in our regular season, like conference, we call them districts in Minnesota, but
right.
it's a conference for football. So we tried to go out and we have six regular or conference games. So then we had 2 non-conference games we had to go get. We typically don't have a ton of control over that
Yeah.
in Minnesota either, because we went to districting football. So everything's kind of you know, organized out by the state high school league. And a lot of times, you're in a big district with like 16 teams, and then it's divided with like a big and a small.
Yeah.
And your non-conference or not out of district games are like just crossover with the other side of that district.
Yeah.
Which is what all the other teams for the most part did in our district. We kind of got the green light to go and get 2 games with teams outside of our district that were in I don't know, I guess technically we're in this giant southern district with like 46 teams or something like that, and they're all subdivided out. So we were able to go get two other teams, two really good football teams. And those were our first two games of the year. So, which was also really good. I like that, playing them early,
Hmm.
just because we're at a point with our program, where we've had a good amount of success recently, and we were bringing back a good team, and it just kind of helped us stay motivated, I think, through the summer, knowing what we were preparing for right away at the beginning of the year. So I liked
Right.
having those tough teams right away. And I, the team we opened up with, we ended up playing them in the first round of the state tournament, so the state quarterfinals,
Right.
and really close games both times, two-score games, kind of all the way through. And I'd probably say arguably maybe the best team we played all year long. So we were fortunate enough to go, find some of those tough opponents. And for us, it was more because everyone makes the playoffs, so we don't need to worry about playoff points and stuff like that and trying to qualify. But just in terms of putting ourselves in that position to having played that caliber of a team, knowing we're going to line up against someone like that at some point in the state tournament. And that's where we ran into a buzzsaw in 2022. Kind of ran the table, undefeated regular season, made it out of our section, and then went up against traditionally one of the best programs in the state.
Hmm.
Um, and they were better than us, but um, having really faced anyone like that up to that point, we wanted to make sure we gave this year's team that opportunity early on, and I think it really did pay dividends for us down the road. Then in the postseason,
Well, what's the phrase? To be the man, you got to beat the man.
yeah,
So
there
it's
you
the
go.
same thing. That's what.
That's true, right? Yeah. So now it's going to be will be uh, they kind of redo schedules and districts every 2 years in Minnesota.
Okay.
So this last year was the first year of that redistricting, and then you even potentially would move up or down divisions and stuff like that. So this upcoming year will be our second year of that. So not a whole lot will change for us, regular season or postseason wise necessarily. So that'll kind of be I guess a known thing for us, at least going through the off season. Now we've played those teams, and from a preparation standpoint will help accelerate our game planning and stuff like that a little bit, having gone against them, and knowing their roster a little bit, too, because we hadn't lined up against one of those teams too many times, which was fun too. You go play someone that you're not necessarily accustomed with.
Right.
So it'll be fun for us to, yeah, kind of
Yeah.
prepare, line up again next year.
Illinois had proposed going to districts, but the way it was going to work, and maybe it works that way there, it was more enrollment based because they would put you in a district of enrollment.
Yeah,
And
that's very similar to here. Yes. So you're actually predetermined what division or classification you're in before the season starts based on enrollment. And that's where we catch some flack because well, someone always has to be the biggest and someone always has to be the smallest, right? In
right.
every division. And for the 2 years prior to this, so 20 and 21, sorry, 21 and 22, we were in 4A. 6A is the biggest in Minnesota.
Right.
So we were in 4A football based on our enrollment. We were the smallest team in the state. So the enrollment line was like 598 students, and we were right at 598 students. Our enrollment dropped by 7 kids then when they reclassified this past off season, and we went down from 4A to 3A. So we were like the second or third biggest probably in the state in 3A.
Hmm.
Um, and, it's out of our, we're not sitting there, uh, you know, adjusting and anything like that. It's just, it is what it is. We've always been on that line. I've been in Stewartville for 13 years now. And we have switched back and forth between 3A and 4A football 4 different times in 13
Right.
years. So we're always going to be right on that line, hovering, just depending on the 4 classes that happen to be in the high school, at that given point in time. So we'll be in 3A football again here one more year, and then who knows after that. But yeah, then you kind of get put in a regular season district with teams similar size, and that was the one thing we're hoping to stay up a little bit, at least from a regular season standpoint. Because we were playing schools with enrollments anywhere from 600 to 1,000 students the last 2 years, which was good for us from a competitive standpoint and really good for our under varsity. I think that's a big thing as a head coach. You are, if you're building a program, you're, making sure that you're building the right way, ninth grade through your varsity
Right.
program. We have a ninth grade and a JV team. And we want to make sure that those guys are getting games and getting opportunities to improve as a football player. And when we were playing those bigger teams, all those schools had ninth grade and JV programs
Right.
as well. So it was really easy from a scheduling standpoint. We could follow the same schedule as our varsity, and those teams were getting 8 games a year. And now this past year, when we moved down a classification, a lot of those teams only have one under varsity team. So we were having to kind of go back and forth between, which team is going to go this week. Is it going to be our JV, which is primarily our 10th grade, or is it going to be our ninth grade team? And then kind of both teams are in a tough situation there because it's either our ninth grade is playing against a combination ninth and 10th grade JV team, and they're kind of at a disadvantage playing against a lot of 10th graders, which is fine. I mean, it's going to challenge them, but in terms of finding, success and winning games, it's going to be tougher for them. And then the flip side, if it's our 10th grade group that goes and plays now, they're, maybe not being challenged and not, is that what's the best for their development either? So it just puts our under varsity programs in a tough spot. So we had to go out and, find a bunch of additional games so that both of those groups could get enough games and continue to develop, because they're going to, not too long from now, they're going to be our varsity group on Friday night. So presents a whole, myriad of challenges as a head football coach as those things move up and down. It's not just the varsity group you got to worry about, but the under varsity development as well, from a program standpoint.
Right. Ours got voted down because I think it was gonna be like the top 3 or 4 from each district go to the playoffs or something. I don't remember, but they wanted to do it because of the travel, because people were complaining in their conference about traveling. But then it was like, well, you chose to go to that conference though, so don't make your problems our problems. And I'll give an example. Like, I'm friends with an O-line coach. He lives like 30 minutes. They're a 5A school in Illinois, which is probably, I think that's like 1,200 kids. The proposal that was made, a school that they'd have to play, they'd have to travel like an hour and 45 minutes to go play this school. And he goes, now, wait a minute. This whole thing was about travel. I'm driving by all these schools I could be playing. Um, and then you look at it, and then then it changes every year. It would change because the enrollment. So every single year, not like it was just,
And that's hard, yeah, to do every year.
like, it kind of made sense for the suburbs, like where I live, kind of like they could get away with it. But where I grew up in central Illinois, where
Yeah, the
when I
outstate.
played high school ball, a team in our conference is 45 minutes away. Like, I don't know. It makes sense in a way, but the way the state of Illinois is such a huge state, the way it
Yes,
is,
right. Yeah.
like I'll never like you'll know Coach Holler's son in Edwardsville, the district that he was in, 2 of them were up in the suburbs. So he's like, wait a minute. So the district you want to put me in, I'd have to drive 3 hours to go play this team in the regular season.
Yeah. Jesus. That's
Like,
right. Makes, like you said, and then you're driving past all these other schools that you could be playing. And we've been fortunate enough. I mean, we've only known it one way. Our longest drive is an hour, if we have or less, and
right.
it's maybe once or twice
Well,
a year. So we're fortunate. It's worked out okay for us, but I know there are, like, when you go and there's enough teams, we're in that southeast pocket, of the state right around Rochester. And so there's enough, a good handful of schools, similar size within an hour, and it works out. But when you start getting out into kind of the western part of the state, and even then up northwest, like kind of up the I-94 corridor and stuff like that, you get up to North South Dakota and things like that, it starts to get a little bit sparse, especially if you're middle to large size school. You're looking at hour and a half, 2 hours travel. So I know there are programs in the state that have that scenario that you're talking about right now. We haven't experienced it yet, but it does exist for a good handful of schools.
which is terrible. It's just terrible.
Yes. Right. Yeah, it's really tough.
That happened to in the playoffs. A coach I worked for or worked with. He's at a school close. They made the playoffs. They had a historical year. It was the first time they had the playoffs in 20 some years. They had to then travel to Quincy, Illinois, near where Coach Dixon is kind of, and it was a 4 hour bus ride just for the playoffs. And
See, and that's where we get. So the big debate in Minnesota right now is, which this is weird, but so when you get to the state quarterfinals, you have your 8 section winners.
yep,
Right now, the state high school league predetermines what sections are going to play against each other before the season even starts. So they're numbered section 1 through 8. 1 through 4 are typically the southern half of the state. 5 through 8 are northern half of the state. I should say like 2 or 3 of those sections are basically the Twin Cities area.
right,
But for that first round of quarterfinals, it rotates every year. We're in section 1. So every 3 years, we will play section 2, section 3, section 4 in the first round of the playoffs, and then it recycles back section 2, 3, 4. Last year, in the playoffs, I mentioned, we got blown out in the state quarterfinal game. We played the section champion from section 2. Well, us and them were both ranked 1 and 2 in the state at the time, both undefeated. And we were playing in the state quarterfinals. And so football right now is the only sport that's not like seeded based on, results of the season. Basketball right now, you get your 8 section winners, coaches vote, and they're seeded 1 through 8, and then you play out the tournament, which no one would argue with that. And so I think that's the big push right now from our coaches association, is trying to get the football state tournament seeded. And I think, something that where a hang up or a roadblock is the travel piece right now. And I
right,
think if you talk to any coach though in the state, we would rather have the right matchups and
mhm,
travel 3 hours in the state quarterfinal game. If
right,
it, like I said, the right matchups, based on seeding or whatever, to hopefully get the 2 best teams playing against each other in the state championship game. And in some years it works out. But in other years you're getting, that state championship game being played in like the quarterfinal round, and then it's blowout in the semifinals and the finals. And I just don't think
right.
that's good either. So it's always seems like, that travel piece is the sticking point for a lot of different reasons.
Well, we battle that just from a public school versus private school standpoint. That was the big. I don't know if you ever saw it on Twitter with Illinois coaches this year. It had blown up with private
Oh,
schools and public schools because in this where I'm from, there's very rarely private schools, but they're not the private schools of the Chicagoland area where
right.
they get a 40-mile radius to pull kids in, and then we're seeing we're seeing dominant public school teams in Illinois that are just good. Then they meet this private school in like the Final Four and get beat by 60, and you're like, well, wait a minute,
Right.
like
That's a head scratcher then there, right? Like,
or the private schools show up to our youth practices with their stuff on. Like it's a thing. And
huh,
so I never battled it in Central Illinois because it was just this is the town you grew up in. This is where you go. There was no real private schools. There's a couple, but they're not the we're gonna recruit every kid.
sure.
It's more oh my family went here or whatever it was. Up here, it's like completely different. And I'm friends with some of the private school coaches here, so we've had conversations and they've educated me because I was part of the group that was just going off on Twitter. And you'll see me sometimes like, oh, it must be nice to recruit this kid or whatever. And then my friends will text me, shut up. Like, let me tell you what happens. And so, but it's just the shady stuff. My friends do it the right way. Like I have conversations with them, like, yeah, we do have to recruit kids, but it's education based. The other ones that they don't work for are sports based.
Yeah.
And so it's a pain. Like we have kids at a private school that should be going to our school, like 4 of them. Or like my first year coaching at the school, we did a youth thing. It was during COVID. We were able to do it. And I'm looking at these linemen. They're like 8th graders. And I'm like, oh my God, they're like my size. This is going to be awesome. I'm thinking in the back of my head. So I'm like, I should go talk to them right now. So I go up to them and they go, we're not going here. We're going to this Catholic school or this Catholic school. And I'm like, wait, what? You live in town? And they're like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. You guys don't win. We're going over there. And I'm like, okay.
It's tough. That's tough.
It's
And
tough.
we're far enough. Yeah, I mean, there's yeah, we don't have to deal with that a whole lot around here. I guess, and that might be, I being up in Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and stuff like that. There might be some of that going on and things like that.
Yeah, I don't mind the recruiting. It's just the shady stuff. Like we got told, we are hearing rumblings and it's going to be proven. They're hiring people and paying them like 12 grand to go to high school games on Friday nights and find the mad parent and go talk to them. And my first reaction was, well, wait a minute, $12,000. What can I get that job? That was my first thought. Then the second thought is, what are you doing at our games on a Friday night? Like, go. It happened to us because we were actually winning games this year. Like last year we were 2-7. And at one point, we're sitting at 4-2, and that's when we heard it happening. And you want to know why? It's because, well, wait a minute, why are they winning now? So they had to come see,
See for themselves.
like, did we have any kid that they could bring to their program type of thing?
Okay.
And so it's hard though, because they're dressed in normal clothes, coming to a game, you have no idea that that's who they are. Because we had a historical season this year, like, and so they wanted to know why. They were like, well, wait, why? Like, why is this happening? And it's like, oh, it can't be just because the kids finally bought in and like we were healthy. And then like it's not because of that. It has to be because there's a kid that
Something,
you can grab.
something external, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because we made the playoffs for the first time for school since 2014.
Nice.
And they wanted to know why. But yeah. And then we won our first playoff game. Like we won our first playoff game. And again, they were like, well, why? And I'm like, it's because we're healthy and we're not beat up anymore because, this,
Oh, we'll show you.
well, we did not fully get into the sprint based feed the cat stuff because I don't care if my head coach listens to this. Like I said, he played linebacker in college. He's all about like old school ways. I have everybody halfway bought in, I should say, like half. They have 1 foot in right now.
Okay.
And so I have not told Coach Holler this because he might not like this. But since we weren't fully into it, I had to figure out a way to do it myself. And the coaches were like, what do you mean you're going to do it yourself? And I said, well, this is what I'm going to do. Our kids, my old line did not have to start on defensive line, but they have to go practice D line. We have to, like our
Sure.
JV, if our JV's doing offense, varsity's doing defense. So I had to look and see what the practice plan was. If I saw for defense, they were doing hitting an individual, inside run, team, then they have to come to me halfway through and play offense. What I would do, okay, we're not going to hit an individual. We're just going to have hand shields. We're going to go very slow. We're going to do hand placement. I'm going to talk to the OC about the inside run period. Do we get rid of it? Do we just do team? Do we scale it back? And I remember the head coach going, well, I saw you down there. Like you didn't really go over plays like hitting. I'm like, yeah, I did. We used hand shields. Like I would rather them
Yeah.
visualize what's about to happen. And I'm not saying this is why, but I have to do it again for a couple years to see if this is why. Is this why my old linemen were healthy this year? And
Right.
I'll never forget one of my senior guys who started with for me since he was a sophomore. It was like day 3 or day 2 of this. He goes, Coach, you haven't made us hit. Now, do you see this thumb up thing?
Yeah.
Don't ask me why it does that.
Let's say I don't get one of those.
Let me tell you a funny story. So I'm getting this podcast rant back up. And I've been very blessed to have like some college guys on, and it's done that. Now I'm thinking they can't see it because they don't say anything. So I left it alone. I
I know
had,
did someone say something.
oh yeah, I had Coach Carrick on the Flexbone 101 YouTube channel guy. We've become friends over this podcast thing. He saw it and he goes, Steve, what is that? And I go, you could see that? He goes, yeah. And I go, shit. Like,
You've been seeing it all along.
I know. And they're probably like, look at this guy. He's bored. He's hitting some button that's going. I don't know
I
what that
thought maybe you had like screen animations and stuff. I thought maybe you were gonna pull up a something that like a graphic or something. Show me there.
No, 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 no. I'm not technologically like that.
Not yet.
But anyway, he's like, why aren't we hitting? And I'm like, hey man, you play linebacker too. I'm not going to beat you guys up. Like I have to pick and choose my battles here. And I'll never forget. It was like week 2 or 3 at halftime. One time, I said, guys, how do we feel? And they go, well, we feel pretty good. And there was one team we played. we should have beat them by more, but they played tough. I'll tell you this, they had 9 guys starting both ways. That's just where they were. But they never gave up until the fourth quarter. The guys working the chain said, "You guys just wore them out up front and running the football and doing these things." And I'm not saying that's because of what some of us were doing, but I have to think that's the right step, the step in the right direction of I'm not going to wear your guys' bodies down. I stopped doing punishments. If there was a punishment, like if they made me mad, I would just stop. If it was individual, I would just stop and be like, all right, guys, go get water. We're going to wait until the next segment because I used to do up downs. You're going to go do this. And I didn't do it no more. And I told the guys, I was like, you can take advantage of this. But if you do, you're the ones losing on Friday night, not me. So I took a completely different turn and we stayed healthy. And then some of the other coaches started to slowly do that stuff. We had to pick and choose our moments. And there might have been times I slipped up and been like, yeah, we got to do something. And the old school would sink in a little bit. But from a mental standpoint, for me too, we weren't hitting all the time. It was more teaching, it was more whatever. It actually helped. I thought I was going to lose my mind. I'm like, I'm not hooping and hollering. We're just going over stuff. We're very easy going into it. I try to convince during any inside run period, let's only do this many plays then. Um, Team, can we only do so many plays? Hey, what if we go on hand shields today? And so slowly in the right direction. Our head coach is slowly getting into that, but
Well,
we're
I think
taking
that's
a
the big
step.
thing. Yeah, is you have to provide some evidence first, right? And so year one is you right learn how to cook and slowly piecing some things together and seeing what the results are. And obviously it sounds like a lot of positive results, which is great. And there's going to be some things you probably look back on and want to change or modify and do different. And every program is different, right? It's a different
Mhm.
situation with kids and time and space and equipment and all that kind of stuff. And so
Right.
I always try to remind coaches of that, to do just, you do the best that you can with what you got. And there's no like right or wrong answer, as long as you are reassessing and as you know more and know better, do better, right?
Right.
Um, you know, for us, I, to go, like you talked about, just taking it easy on them during the week, and then you
Yeah.
asked them during the game, how do you feel? And they feel good. And I think that's a big thing that, the old school coaching mentality, and I'm guilty of it. I mean, it's what I grew up in, and it's how I coached the first, whatever it was, 10 years of my career. Was we want to work them really, really hard in practice during the week because we
Yep.
feel like that's going to prepare them then for Friday, right? Like push them and beat them up during the week, and then somehow magically Thursday night they're going to have this amazing sleep and recovery and be 100% ready to go for Friday. And it's
Yep.
been hard during the week, and so the game's going to feel easy. But when in actuality, because we beat them up so much during the week, they're going into the game, at probably 60-70% healthy. And that's your starting point then, right? And that's going to deteriorate as
Yeah.
the game goes on. And so no one's going to feel good then, by halftime or the second half or whatever. So our mentality is we're going to go into Friday night feeling as fresh and healthy as possible, because everyone's going to fatigue and get tired throughout the course of the football game. There's
Right.
nothing you can do to prevent that. You can do as much conditioning as you want in the world, and guys are going to still feel tired at points during the football game.
Right.
But if we can be healthier and faster to start the game, and we get out, quickly on teams and get ahead, and they start to fatigue, they're never going to be faster or more explosive than us at any
Right.
point during the game.
Right.
And I always say too, because of that approach during the week, we are more violent on a Friday night as a
Yep.
team because of it. And I
Right.
don't know if felt that, or guys in your program would attest to that. But if you ask anyone that lined up against us, or you put on our tape, soft is not a adjective that you would use to describe the way we play at the line of scrimmage, on defense, special teams, you name it. And so it's crazy, almost a little counterintuitive, but again, that's the whole feed the cats approach, is kind of
Mhm.
It is counterintuitive. It's a little bit the opposite of what you grew up or what you think. But because of that healthy and fresh mentality or mindset approach that we have to it, guys then are ready. They're caged up. That's what Coach Dix always says, right? They're
Yep.
caged animals, and they come out on Friday night. And you turn them loose.
Yep.
And amazing what they can go do then. So, we we'll obviously certainly never do it another way. But I think it doesn't take long for coaches when they start to implement it for the first time to realize that, oh yeah, man, we're onto something here. And I
Right.
think, like you said, your players start to recognize it pretty quickly too. And you're going to get better and you're going to improve with time. It takes, that's the other thing is, I got an email from a coach recently, and he said it himself in the email. It was like, basically I need a quick fix. Like
Hmm.
I'm on the hot seat a little bit, and we need to change something. And he was, very complimentary and wanting to implement everything from a sprint-based football approach. But it's like, I'm like, it took us 6 years. It took us 6 years
Right.
uh, to get to this point. And so you have to have. I mean, you're going to see improvement right away, but it's not. It's not like this huge dramatic shift instantly. Like it
That's
takes.
with anything, though. That's with anything.
It's like with right. It's like, yeah, and you have to have realistic expectations. And it's never going to replace, talent and good schemes and good coaches and execution. Um, it's not going to replace those things. Turning the ball over, committing penalties like blocking and tackling. I mean, it it enhances your ability to do those things better. I think
Right.
able to execute better because of it, and you maybe are able to retain things and you're more explosive and all that kind of stuff. But it's not going to replace your team's ability to execute the football specific things that win and lose football games. So, you got to still do all that stuff well in
Right.
addition to, but a feed the cats approach enhances your ability to do
Right.
things at a high level, I think.
Because we didn't do, like I said, you would watch a practice like this is not a sprint based by any stretch. Like we didn't do the sprinting stuff and all that stuff. But I just think slowly we were doing a little less, whether it was less practice time, whether it was, more meeting time, see, there it is again.
I'll give you
Don't
a
ask me why.
version.
Um, but I walked into it saying, okay, I can only control my group. So if my group is gonna do less and they're the most important group, fine. This is what we're gonna do. Change pregame. Like, you know how it is. Like you split up. Okay, offensive line here, blah, blah, blah. Offensive line would come down to me and I used to hit. We're gonna hit. We're gonna do this. Get our bodies warmed up because that's what we thought. This year, they'd come down. Okay, guys, just a real mental check. Inside zone steps, wide zone steps. Make sure we're getting to the right aiming point. And it was slow. Like it wasn't like we walked through some plays. I give them a nice little not a hoorah speech, but just a quick mental talk to for a minute. Then we went to the sideline, had water, and waited. And you're watching the quarterbacks throw the football around. You're watching running backs do whatever. And I don't remember if it was a fan or somebody that works with us saying, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "We're waiting." What do you mean?
Nothing. We're
We're
doing
doing
nothing.
we're doing nothing. And they
And
said,
that's okay.
well, because you and Coach Holler would leave if you watched. No offense to our strength coach, fantastic human being, but he interned at Northwestern. So our flex period is them in lines and they're doing their thing for 10 yards and stuff like that. And every single day in practice, I walked out there and I said, this flex period's stupid. This is stupid. This is stupid. And some of the coaches were like, but that they're opening up, they're waking up their body. And I'm like, we could go into a quick individual group and just walk through plays, and that's waking their body up. I don't know. They walk. We have to walk to the practice field. Like it takes us like 2 minutes to walk there.
That's waking them up.
That's right.
Say,
We're walking.
yeah, yeah. We RPR, and then practice. We use our special teams period as our movement wake up.
Yeah.
We RPR. We do our special teams, which is always pretty limited from a contact standpoint. There isn't any. It's a lot of line assigned stuff. We're going through some repetition. A lot of it's on air, with a couple maybe bodies in place and things like that. That's our warm up then for our O&D practice.
Yeah. I tried to do it. There was times where if offense was going first or if offense had a meeting, you could choose. Do you want to meet in the team room and go over film, or do you want to go to the field? And sometimes I said, "Oh, line, go to the field," and we'd have our helmets off. We're going just walking through plays. I'd rather them see it live instead of on the board. Sometimes it just kind of depended.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
and kids learn differently. I think it's good
yeah,
to provide both.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so to me, I'm like, hey, so we would do that, but then practice would start and they go right into that flex and do that. And I'm like, well, we've already moved around a little bit. Or I would steal time and go out there and just say, hey, we're going to do our inside zone steps real quick on these cones. We're not going fast. It's just boom, 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 boom. We're done. Then we go to the flex period. And then my argument always was, well, why are we doing that? Then doing flex and we're getting tired or wasting energy. And, well, we're organized. I don't care if the head coach listens to this. Me and him butt heads. He's slowly getting there. He keeps talking about if he has the money, me and him will go get RPR certified or like go look at this stuff. And we just have to find the time. But he's slowly getting there. But during the season, I was known as the complainer because I complained about the flex period. I complained about it before a game. I was the big complainer about it. I'm like, yeah, my biggest quote, yeah, let's get tired before the game. That's what I want to do. I want to get tired or something. And they're like, the argument was, well, Steve, what you implement something? And I was like, I can. Let's just start practice. We don't even have to do anything. Just start practice and we're good.
It'd be okay. And I think, for coaches that are listening to this, you might be in a situation where you're not the head coach and you don't maybe get to make, the decisions on how practice is structured and what game day looks like and all that kind of stuff. I think some of the things that you mentioned are probably good takeaways. How can you implement, at least within what you can control, right? Your position group,
Right.
and kind of that culture within the guys that you are working with every day, and looking at, what is the practice plan for the day. And we use, kind of that chart, that high low model,
Mhm.
Father Francis, wave theory, and so, kind of building up to Friday. And so, Tuesday's low, Wednesday's a little bit higher, Tuesday's low, and then Friday's high, obviously game day. And so how can you kind of structure, at least your indie portion of time to kind of meet that, and or balancing out with the other things that they're doing out at practice? Because ultimately, number one, like you said, health, is the players' availability is their best ability, right? So what can you do to make sure guys are healthy but still ready to go from a mental standpoint? And there's plenty that we can do to make sure that they're in great position, and they know what to do, and how to execute their job and their assignment. So just because maybe you're not a feed the cats program necessarily, or a sprint based football program, there's still, I think, pieces to what we do that you can implement within the 20 square feet that you control in
Yep.
your space, to help your athletes out. And then, like you said, and then having conversations about results from that, because I think that's the big thing then, right?
Yep.
If something sucks and doesn't work, and you lose, then people aren't going to listen to you and they aren't going to do it. But there's a long track record of success stemming from this approach,
Mm-hmm.
program wide, whether it be football or track, or whatever else it's been applied to. So you can go and talk to those coaches, and see how they do it, or obviously, in house, starting to use some of those experiences and those outcomes, and making connections between what you're doing and what you're achieving. And like you said, it's hard year one, hard to maybe attribute what to what, but you'd like to believe that what you're doing, at least it didn't make it worse, right? And
Right.
so, if nothing else, and that's the thing I talk a lot about too, with our sprint based approach, or feed the cats approach. Like, there are traditional old school ways to go do it, and teams are going to go win state championships doing that,
Mm-hmm.
and that's fine. But then I guess my argument is, if we can go win a state championship doing it our way, it's such a better experience for the kids and the coaches. Why would we not want to then deliver that experience, and have guys look back at, football as the best part of their high school career? Yes,
Right.
there's two ways. There's always, two ways to skin a cat, whatever, and you can go win it doing an old school way. But if I can provide a better experience to athletes and have them enjoy it more, and be, happy and healthy through the process, why wouldn't we want to choose that way to do it? And so I think that's the other big side of the coin as well, is the experience that you deliver to kids and the relationships that you build doing it this way is, I think, superior to anything else.
Well, and that was the funny part. The seniors told some of the young guys, like, you did not wait around Coach Steve the last couple of years because we'd be doing up downs, we'd be doing this, we'd be hitting, we'd be doing this. And they're like, ooh, okay. And that kind of helped me out. I'm like, okay, you
Yeah.
guys feel better. That's okay. Or like, or sometimes they would say, are we going to hit today? And I'm like, yeah, and team, duh. And they go, why? And I'm like, because it's like a game. Like, it's a game. Why are we going to hit the whole practice and then go do it again? And some of the kids that I told that to, they didn't understand it. And then as it went through, they go, well, that makes sense. Even they were like, that makes sense. Then they go, why can't we do that on defensive line? And I'm like, well,
Well, I think that's a big thing with a lot of this is like once you do it and you really look at it and think about it and how it's applied, and it's a performance based model, right? Like we are setting up our athletes to perform at a high level in a game, and mimicking then those high performance outputs in practice, and how do you need to structure things to be able to attain those high performance outputs. And then when you sit down and you look at all those things, like, oh yeah, I guess does it make sense.
right.
And I think that happens to a lot of coaches if you give it the time and understand the implementation and the results from it. It just makes sense.
Well, that's why I can't brag about it this year. It'd have to be, hey, the next 2 seasons, if it continues, I could be like, hey, remember in 2023 when I was trying to do this and now it's working, you know, maybe we should start doing some of it. Um, or I might start doing it now. We don't start the weight room. We just started the weight room, just started it. I told the head coach, hey, if I research a little more and come up with a plan, I'll take over the sprint stuff because it's only going to take us like 15 minutes. Like it's not going to take very long. And I think that might bring kids into the weight room. Like you said, if they come to the weight room every day and they're like, oh, gotta do this, gotta do this. Well, what if it's, hey guys, don't get here till 6:30. We're gonna do a sprint workout, then we're done. Then tomorrow you can lift. Like that might bring more kids in. They're like, and I might start like a club, at least an offensive lineman club, and be like, hey, you show up to this percentage, you're gonna get a t-shirt, you're gonna get a hat, you're gonna get
Right. Incentivize, right? Things, stuff like that. It's amazing what kids will do for a t-shirt.
oh, I know. And oh, I'm the same way. Every time we get gear, I'm like, can I get two of those? Like you're just like, can I get two?
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. And we kind of set up our off season the same way. And, we have 2 sprint days a week. We only work out 3 days a week. So again, we want to have more rest days than work days,
Right.
because rest and recovery is the most important piece. So we go 3 days a week in our off season. We're sprinting usually on, well, it's changed a little bit year to year, and more only because of our constraints with our building space and our in season, like winter basketball teams and wrestling teams that have to get in the weight room and use spaces and stuff like that. So
Right.
the days that we're sprinting has changed from year to year, and that's only, like I said, just because of the situation. But 2 days of sprint, and then one day of kind of our agility change of direction, and then we're in the weight room after that. But it's about an hour and 30 minutes total, each day, about 45 minutes
Right.
each. Um, but being able to sprint first is so huge because it turns that CNS on, and
Hmm.
that brain, everything's on fire, and it's going to make the weight room work better.
Right.
After you do the sprint stuff, because they're just going to get more out of that lift because everything is firing, quickly and explosively. Um, and so to be able to structure it that way, has worked really really well for us. And again, you do the best with what you got, and if you can't sprint 2 days a week, then the next best thing is to sprint one day a week, or
Right.
sprint every other week, whatever you can fit it in. But just obviously the benefits from that sprinting from a health standpoint, we don't have soft tissue injuries or anything like that. Pulled hamstrings we haven't had one for 3 years. So people are worried, oh, if I sprint, they'll get hurt. It's like, no, you're actually like bulletproofing your body when you go sprint. It's going to help you stay healthier. And then just the the seeing that, Tony's starting to really dive into just the effects on the brain from
Right.
sprinting, and
Right.
then how that translates to everything else you do. If sprinting is the most complex movement that our body has to create, it's the whole thing with, if you train the extremes, and if my body can coordinate that really well at a high level, to coordinate anything else is going to be easier, for us to do. And so we're going to get better at our other sports specific skills because we're sprinting, which is crazy to think. But same thing, like, all the studies out there with movement exercise, and then learning in the classroom and stuff like that. It's a similar, right, similar transfer. So yeah, it's been great model for us for the last 5 years now, and we just kind of rolled over to our 2024 off season, and been a great start so far. I think that's a great part, like you said, you start to tie some of that success with your process and what you do, and guys really start to see and feel the benefit from that, and how they've built themselves into apex predators is what we call them, right?
Right.
uh, and how that translates to their success in the football field. You get guys excited to come in and work out, because they know the impact it's going to have, and it's not long, and we try to make it a great experience, and build some competitiveness into it, fun, right? Guys are competitive, and so find ways to race, and record, ring, publish everything that you do too, right? So that inherently drives that competitive fire within them a little bit, to continue to get faster, and drive that intent. So yeah, it's like I said, once you do it, it just kind of makes sense, and then you see the results, and you double down on it then after that point.
And I know you got to go, but the last thing, one of the things you said that I thought I was thinking to old school ways was you always sprinted after lifting because the big push was we have to be able to move heavy weight. We got to be able to do this. So you saying sprinting before lifting, and I tried to say that too, was in our minds the opposite. Like you got to lift, then go run, because if you run and then go lift, you're going to be tired and you can't get this ultimate lift. But I think we're all kind of gravitating towards away from one rep maxes have their spot. It's cool to see it based off of percentages, what you're going to go lift. But ultimately, it's like you're lifting weights, you're going to get stronger no matter what you're doing, as long as you're consistent with it. Like, the older we get and we lift, we're going to get stronger. Even though we're all getting older, it's still
Right.
going to do the
Just
same
so
thing.
accumulate, right, over time.
Right.
uh, yeah, so it's and that's the thing, like a sprint workout is not like, no one walks away, if you do it right, you shouldn't be walking away from a sprint workout tired. Like, no one is tired or sore. Like, they're not breathing heavy, and most of them haven't broken a sweat,
Right.
because building in adequate rest to be able to have a high output, you have to have adequate rest to be able to, um, for your body to have that high output. So it's, and we do a couple sprint drills, and we do 2 time sprints, and then we're in the weight room. But again, if you look at just like football, like
Mhm.
if you do a sprint workout, a majority of the workout is guys standing around
Mhm.
or sitting down and resting, and then it's choppy, and then it's intermixed with a 6 second, 4 or 5 6 second burst,
Right.
uh, and then a ton of rest, just like a football practice is, or just like a football game is. Um, and so no one's, yeah, you're not ever tired. There's nothing taken away, but your brain and body has to be able to coordinate that highest output. And if you're in the weight room and you tax that system, you're not going to be able to achieve max velocity or peak acceleration and that kind of stuff out in that workout. Now you're not improving those qualities that we want to improve. And so if you structure it right and you're able to sprint first, you're going to improve that speed and acceleration. And then that's going to kind of turn everything on to go into the weight room, and improve those qualities as well, which are important. Like I said, we lift 3 days a week still, and getting strong and powerful, and adding some body armor
Mhm.
is still really, really important too for football. And so we still make that a priority. We just make sure it's in line with our speed development, and it doesn't take away from that.
Right. Well, Coach, I appreciate your time being on here. I know you're a busy guy, state winning title coach, got things to do, but I appreciate you being here.
Hey, anytime, Steve. I love coming on and follow the podcast. Some amazing guests that you've had on. It's awesome to kind of see that the community that you've built, and happy, honored to be a part of that. So thank you again for having me on, and good luck with everything in the off season.